Okay. So you're getting any message to accept or decline for recording?
Just says that meeting is being recorded.
Okay, fine. So let us begin. So I'll just briefly go through what we have already discussed. So the plan is that today we'll finish with the premix flames, and let me make announcement. So basically we have got some dates from administration. So midterm will be roughly around this. So end of September or first week, October 3rd, we have to finish. Okay. So the syllabus will be, we have covered thermodynamics, chemical kinetics, premix flames, and diffusion flame by next week should be over. Okay, so next week we'll try to wind up with diffusion flames, and that will be the syllabus for this midterm. Anyway, this will be like 2-3 days you will get, and let us look at the policies what they have got. So this is not like 100% confirm. We again will get some inputs. So as you can see that we have about 30% weightage for class assignments. Okay, we also have, I am also planning for one major assignment which will be CFD. So that I will put more marks. That will decide how to distribute this. Then mid semester will be of 25%. Okay. So this is all what has come in the notice. Okay. And then we will have some, there's some meeting, administration will have some meeting to decide whether to allow you or not. But in my understanding, most likely it will be online only. I don't know how they will decide, but that the final end sum will be of 35. Okay, and attendance and all, they have suggested 10%, but there are a lot of sincerity and all. So I'll see. Mostly, I will try to distribute into marks. So we will look at how to go about it. But this is what notice we have got. So is everyone clear with this? So because this has been communicated to me, so I am supposed to inform you all what should be the approximate weightage. So 4-5% here and there we can see how to adjust, but roughly this will be how your marks will look like. Okay, everyone is clear with this? Any
Yes,
doubt?
sir.
Fine. If I get any changes or any other distribution from admin, I will let you know. And this is the schedule what I have got. So I am planning like end of September. We'll give like, I'll see what are the policies. If we can take in one day or at least 3 days, I think we are supposed to give. So maybe by end of September I'll give, and by 3rd October we all have to submit. Okay, and also for assignments and this midsem, I have one more assignment and I have some guidelines that I will post on this. And when will be the midsem? End sem will be around November end. Okay, theory examination should be completed. This is the present status. Okay, it might change, but this is the notice what I've got. I'm just sharing with you from Dean office. Okay, so just to inform you all. Now let us go back to our premix flames. Okay, so just to review quickly, we have talked about what is the difference between premix and non-premix diffusion flames. We have looked into some videos, and flame structure I believe you all are clear with, right? We talked about, yes, any question? Okay, laminar flame speed we discussed about Maillard and Le Chatelier's theories. So this is again I am giving you as an assignment. So if you have any doubt, you please let me know. So I will give you an assignment that you derive this equation and write the assumption. I will mail you all. But if you have any, so this is basically to make sure that you understand this theory. Okay, this is a very important theory for premix flames. So it is more of a for you to understand. If you have any doubt, you can ask me. But I would like all of you to derive this in on paper, and you can just have a look at this. This is what you have to write in your own words. Don't just copy it blindly. Okay, so this and one more collusion theory that we have discussed in kinetics. These two I'm giving as assignments. So you can take help from this lecture slides. Everything is given here. Okay, and you have to write what you understand. So I will again put the instructions clearly in, when I give assignment. Okay, so why I'm telling this, if you have any doubt, you ask now. Okay, because you have to write this and submit it. If you don't have any doubt, then wonderful. We will go ahead. So we talked about flame structures. This all we have discussed, right? How flame looks, where are the major and minor species located, how temperature varies, how species varies. This have hopefully you all are clear with. Now let us talk about flame speed measurements. Okay, so up to here, anyone having any doubt? No doubt, anyone? If you have, please ask me. You people can hear me, I don't know.
Hear you,
Can
sir.
I?
We can hear
Yes,
you,
sir,
sir.
we can hear you.
Okay, fine. So
Yes,
just
sir.
keep speaking, otherwise I will not know whether I have lost net or anything. Okay, let us then go to flame speed measurement. So this we have anyway briefly spoke about. Now we'll go in a little detail and we'll try to wind this up. Okay, so as I told, there are either propagation or stationary methods. Then we look into how to take image of flame. Okay, so either you can do a simple. Let me see if I can get up. Okay, good. So either you can do a simple photography. So luminous is a basically you're trying to capture the flame image using the light it is emitting. It is a normal photography, or you can take a shadowgraph or Schlieren. I will talk very briefly about these two, and then there are laser-based diagnostics. So we'll not go into detail, but this is a technique that you should just be aware of. You should know that we can do some laser-based diagnostics to find chemical species. Okay, let us have a look. Okay, so this is how your temperature profile looks. Okay, this is your fuel region and this is your burn product, right? Temperature rises for after the within the reaction. So the initial part is the Schlieren zone. If you take Schlieren image, then you will be mapping this. The middle part is shadow graph, which is this middle region, and the last region is luminous zone. Normal photo what you take. Okay, so but that will not make much of a difference because this flame length is roughly like order of millimeter, 1 millimeter or half millimeter. So they're not very far apart. Okay, but means because you're studying the subject, you should theoretically know where each part is there. Okay, now let us briefly discuss what is this. What do I mean by Schlieren? Okay, so basically what happens is that in Schlieren or shadowgraphy, you let us say you have a test section where you have gradient change in this direction. Okay, the density of density gradient. So density of air is changing in y direction. So what happens because of that is, if you have a light entering this region, it will get bent. Okay, it will either go up or down depending on how your density is varying. Why this happens is because refractive index depends on density of that medium, and because you have a density gradient, refractive index will also vary and light will bend. Okay, so you have to study Snell's law, and it is a lot of theory behind it. I'm just giving a brief overview. What is the Schlieren image? Okay, so if you want to do this experiment, you can have a simple water. This is a water in a beaker or a container, and they have made some sugar solution. So the concentration is more in the bottom and less at the top. So because of this density gradient in this direction, you can see that a laser pointer that is bending like this. Okay, everyone can see this.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I will not go into the detailed derivation or how the technique works, but this is the brief background. This is the physics behind this method, that light bends, and we use this bending to obtain Schlieren or shadowgraph imaging. Okay, now what is the difference? Schlieren basically depends on your gradient of the density. Okay, first derivative, whereas shadowgraphy depends on the second derivative, del square. Okay, how that affects and all that We'll not go into detail, but this is just the brief basics, a very brief outline. And this is how you take image. So this is a Schlieren image. If you are interested, if you want to know more about these techniques, you can refer to these sites. You can go to Wikipedia, or you can also, this image I've taken from this website, from Peterson Group at TAMU. So what you see here is that we have a spherical vessel, okay, and we fill it with uh, unburned mixture, premixed mixture. These are the igniters. Once you ignite, there is a flame front which grows with time. Okay, so you capture how, at what rate this is increasing, and then you know what is the flame speed. So this is a very good example of Schlieren photography. This is how Schlieren looks. Schlieren image looks. Okay, now we'll talk about, we have briefly discussed this flame tube propagation, spherical bomb, and soap film. Now we'll look into more detail little bit. So flame tube is, as I told, a linear propagation, and these two are spherical propagation. So can you see the top part, or it is hidden behind this presenting thing? Can you all see this flame tube propagation?
We can see till the heading, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We can see that heading.
You can see this part. Okay. For my case, it is one top bar is coming. Anyway, good. So this is a flame tube that we have already discussed, and I have written some limitations. So you can read it. There is no much theory or explanation. Basically, the idea is that ideally, when we talk theoretically, we say that the flame front is a straight line and it moves normal to this direction. But in actual experiment, what happens is it gets bent because of various effects. One thing is that the velocity profile is parabolic. Then there are some buoyancy effect. So because of all this is approximate technique. This is not a very good method to measure flame speed. Okay. A better method is a spherical bomb. So as I told you, you can have a chamber like this where we have igniters from top and bottom. So these are the electrical circuit which creates a spark here, and because of that it burns. Okay. So this is what example I have shown. So you can measure what is the rate of this, how fast this spherical flame is expanding, and from that you can calculate flame speed. So let us look at what happens here exactly. So let us say this is your flame front. Okay, this red region is your flame, and your burned products are inside, unburned products are outside. So if I take a small narrow region, if I cut a section of this flame, what I can say is, see this green color is your unburned fresh gas, and this dark brown is burned gas. Okay, now can I approximate is it like a flame in a tube? What we have discussed quite thoroughly in our previous discussion. So if you take a very small cut section, we can approximately say that this is analogous to a flame in a tube. Okay. Now, if I assume that my frame of reference is this flame front, let us see the observer is moving at the speed of the flame front. Observer is sitting on this flame front. So can I say that if my observer is sitting on the flame front, can I say that the flame will appear stationary to him? Everyone agrees to that? If observer is
Yes, sir.
sitting on the flame front, then flame front will appear to be stationary. Flame front is not moving because he is moving with the flame. Everyone is okay with that statement?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Fine. So let us say that this is what we are talking about. So what is the speed at which the unburnt gases will approach SL, right? That is the laminar burning speed at which the unburnt gases are coming. So actually the flame is moving out, but when I sit on the flame, I will see that flame is standing stationary and unburnt gases are approaching. And these burnt gases are moving away from the flame, let us say with velocity Vf. Now this Vf will be the velocity, actual velocity of the flame front, which appears to stationary observer. Flame is growing. Okay, so that is what Vf denotes. So now for this coordinate, when I say that flame is stationary, mass conservation will hold good. Okay, mass conservation will be applicable. So I can say n dot is rho av. Now let us have a look at n dot in the left side. For unburnt mixture, what is coming to the flame, I can say that rho ab is rho unburnt area of this section and SL, flame velocity. Whereas for the right hand side, for the burnt mixture, I can say that m dot burn, what is leaving the flame front is rho burnt, rho av. Okay, burnt density and velocity. Now since mass is conserved, what mass is coming to the flame, the same mass is leaving the flame. So I can say m dot u is equal to m dot b, and using that I come to this equation. Okay. Now if I relate these two, I can say that SL can be represented like this. Basically I'm just sending this rho u that side. A gets cancelled, rho u sent that side, it will become rho b by rho u into Vf. Is this okay to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Fine.
Yes, sir.
Now this Vf is basically dr by dt. Okay, this is the rate at which the flame expands for a stationary observer. If I am standing outside, if I am not moving with the flame speed, then this is the dr by dt. So we can relate the flame speed by using the density ratio and the rate at which the flame front expands for a normal stationary observer. This is the basics of spherical flame expansion. So there are some limitations using this method. So pressure and temperature will increase when you have large flame, when a large area is filled or the flame is going towards the wall. Okay. Now initially this is good. Initially there is not much increase in temperature and pressure, but initially the flame is distorted. It is having very large curvature. So that is also not good. Okay. So burning, taking this flame shift measurement for very large flame or very small flame is not good. So you have to take something in between. So that is one of the limitations of this method. And what we assume here is that the flame front thickness is negligible and curvature is negligibly small. So this is not true when the flame is very small. So for example, let us go back to, yeah. So here you see that the curvature is very small. Here the curvature, you can like, I assume that this is approximately flat. So that is good here, but now it is very big. It is almost filling. So these two images are approximately good to take flame speed measurements. The middle two images, first and last, are not good. Okay, then one big assumption is that the pressure at any instant is uniform. So that is in general true, unless you are having a very fast or detonation that we have not studied. But for normal cases, this is a good assumption. Then no heat loss, that is also assumption that you need to be aware of. And you also assume that chemical equilibrium is achieved, which is also a reasonably good assumption. So again, a very similar method is the soap bubble method. So what happened in that bomb method is that you have a closed vessel and pressure increases with time. Now if you create a soap bubble, then you can maintain the pressure constant. Okay, bubble will expand up to some point and then it will burst. So for a small period we can take flame speed measurement. But this method also has a lot of limitations. So again we will use the same equation what we have used for spherical bomb to measure the flame speed SL. But the limitation is that first you have to pass the mixtures through water solution, soap solution, so you cannot have a dry mixture. It will always have some moisture. Then if when your bubble expands, okay, it may not retain a perfectly spherical shape. Bubble can become ellipsoid or something like that. And if you have a fast flame, flame front will not be very smooth. So that is another concern with this method. And heat loss, which is also there for last bomb, that is also an issue here. And again, it is not a simple task to create bubble. It is again a difficult or troublesome task when you want to create a bubble. So this is one method which you know for completion, but it is not a like great method to follow. Okay. So now let us look at stationary methods, which are I would say much more simpler to use, and some, for example, the last one is much more accurate. So let us have a look. So one is a flame tube. Okay, that we have discussed already. So you have a tube and you supply fuel in such a way that your velocity matches the flame speed. So in that way we can maintain a stationary flame, and using this velocity I can say that this is my flame velocity, and that is how it can be measured. But again, it will be very difficult to create a stationary, stable and thin flame like this, which is very straight and is not distorted. Okay, so theoretically it is a good method, but practically it is little bit tricky, difficult to obtain a very flat flame using this. Okay, so these are the limitations what we have already mentioned. Now let us look at this Bunsen burner or a conical flame, what we have already discussed. So this is a simple and effective method. What we can do is we can have a simple flame and we can measure the cone angle. Now using this cone angle, you can calculate what is the flame velocity SL, because U we know, sin theta we know, so SL we can calculate, right? So this is one very simple and accurate method, but because this region is very small, so there are issues while taking photograph. Okay, so if you have a laser illumination, then it might come very good, nicely like this. Otherwise, because this is a very small region, so your imaging may not be very accurate. So a small change in this theta angle will give some change in SL. So that is the error associated with this method. So again, coming to the limitations, that heat loss cannot be avoided. Burning velocity we assume, but strictly speaking it is not true. But for practical cases, this is a good assumption. And large diameter and all this we'll discuss. Flashback we have discussed briefly, but this is another topic. We'll take it maybe next week. So these are some of the issues associated with this Bunsen burner method. Now let us talk about the last method, flat flame burner. So this is like one of the most accurate methods which you can use to measure flame speed. So what we do here is basically we have a burner like this where we get a flat flame. Okay, I will show you photos how do we get a flat flame, but this is how it looks. Now what we do is we have a sintered metal disc here, okay, and we are having fuel air mixture coming from the bottom. So this fuel air mixture is entered here, and these are some flow conditioning apparatus. So basically we'll have glass beads and steel wool. So basically the function of this is to make the flow uniform, okay, to reduce turbulence, to make very nice and uniform flow. And again the same thing will be done by the sintered disc. So this is a porous metal disc. I will show you some photos. So through this the flame passes. So that gives a very flat or very uniform velocity profile, because there will be large delta P across this porous disc, and because of that we get a very nice flat flame here. Okay, now what we do in this method is that we have a metal disc and we apply cooling here. Okay, water tubes are there which cool this disc. Basically we are extracting heat from flame. what we do is we take different rates of cooling and finally we extrapolate that to zero cooling for adiabatic. So flame speed is basically defined for adiabatic flame where there is no cooling at all. So we use different cooling methods and then we go back to adiabatic, and this is how we define flame speed measurement SL. Okay, for different rates of cooling and what I already just spoke. So let us look at the photos.
These
Yes.
two, so these two, I mean, flame speed and cooling rate vary linearly, sir.
Yes, that is an assumption. Mostly it will be linearly.
Yes.
Okay. So actually there is one very important question that no one is asking that we'll come to. Anyway, this is how that actual burner looks. So I've taken, there's a Makina burner. So they have some copyright, this flatflame.com, what you see. You can go to this website to look at more of the designs. So how does it look is, this is your sintered metal disc. I have a photo also. So this is your metal disc. This is made of bronze. Okay, and this has very small porous holes. Okay, the holes may be of like 20 micron, 40 micron, of that order. So because of that, there is a large delta P and we get a very nice uniform velocity profile. Okay, and these are the tubes you can see inside this. So these tubes will pass water. Water is entering from one tube and then it is circulated inside it, and then the hot water comes out through another tube. Okay, this is your center disc, as you can see here. This is your cooling circuit, and here the fuel enters. So fuel enters from here, and then it basically it has a slightly higher pressure than atmospheric, and it then fuses. It just goes out through this porous. Let me draw. So the fuel comes out like this through this porous disc, and then it forms a flame which looks like this. So can you see, this is a very nice flat flame, and this is like one of the most accurate or idealized method which we utilize for flame speed measurement. And when you go for laser diagnostics, this is a very standard burner used to calibrate your laser instruments. Okay. So as I told, that flame area we can get by using Schlado, Stereo, or we can also use laser imaging. So uncertainty is removed. Now we know the total flame area and we divide it by the volumetric flow rate. So burning velocity can be accurately obtained. And as well, this is the most simplest and most accurate method discussed so far. So I told you there's one very big question here no one is asking. So as I mentioned that we are doing a cooling, okay, but ideally we need adiabatic conditions to define the flame speed, right? So a very obvious question is, why can't I have an adiabatic burner? Don't use this cooling water. Why do we need this cooling water? Anyway, we will not have any cooling water. Straight away we can measure SL, right? So any guess why do we need?
Probably, so as you said, the diameter of the porous holes are 20 to 40 micrometers. That means the area to volume
Yes.
of that small areas are actually very high. So heat transfer will be high, and then the metal might melt. Will
Expansion
that
takes
be
place.
Okay. So
Maybe,
there are, yes,
sir, I'm
yes,
saying,
yes.
sir, hole may expand, sir, due to temperature.
Okay, that is, I would say, a good try, but the correct answer is what was told previously. So what happens is these are bronze. It melts around 900 or 1000 degrees Celsius. You see the flame
Yes.
is very close to the surface, so it actually melts. Let me show you one photo. So this is one photo I captured during my PhD. Okay, so I made a similar type of burner, and I did not have this cooling circuit. I just have this and I measured, I took an image. Okay. So do you see any difference between this image and this image?
Yes, sir.
What is the difference?
That is
Sir,
less dark. Means
sir,
Okay. Yes, yes.
thickness.
Actually, it is at different angle. So it is little tilted. But I'll tell you, the one difference is that it is not very uniform.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And the flame is not very nice. And this was actually the last photo I took with that burner. After that, the burner melted. Okay. So if you have a porous plug like this, you have a bronze disc. If you don't have cooling, this is going to melt with after some time. Okay. So that is
Sir,
why
then,
cooling is,
sir,
yes.
sir, then why don't we use metals with high melting point?
Yes, correct. So we have, see, but that will be more costly. That is only concern. So we have adiabatic burners also. We have like steel burner where we have steel this plug. Okay, and there are some other metals also. For those burners we don't need adiabatic cooling.
Yes, sir.
That can be eliminated. But this is the most general method.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and with cooling you can actually make it more accurate. When, see, once that burner gets heated up, we don't know what temperature it is, so accuracy is not very good. But if you have cooling, you can accurately extrapolate here. That is one point. We have like straight tubes instead of porous burner. We could have also have tubes of different metals, but that does not give a very uniform flame. And there are, if you go to this side, they are also selling some steel burners. Okay, that are also, that should give good, but first they are very costly because the sinter disc production is costly, and this is found to be more accurate. By this extrapolation, you get a very accurate flame speed. That is the idea.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, so now let us go to the last part of this chapter. That also we have discussed. We'll just go into more detail. I've added some more plots. So let us see. So laminar bonding velocity is like very important for premix plane. Okay, and it is difficult to achieve idealized conditions. Okay, so there are very, like for example, the last method is the most accurate. So we'll see that what are the techniques and okay, so this is just to summarize. Oh, sorry. So these are the different factors. Okay, we talked about different ways we have measured. They talked about what are the practical issues, what are the limitations. Now we'll see what are the factors that affect your flame speed. Okay, so this is one equation that has derived in terms. I'm not going into the derivation, but this is an empirical fit, and you can see what are the various parameters on which your flame speed depends. So definitely it depends on temperature. It also depends on pressure, and it also depends on energy of activation. But this basically tells you the dependence on fuel, what type of fuel you use, so that determine your EA. So we talked that will also be linked to equivalence ratio. So we'll talk about equivalence ratio, initial temperature, pressure, and addition of inert gas. This will affect your final temperature. Okay, so let us have a look. Now, before we go to dependence on flame velocity, we also need to look how flame temperature is affected. Okay, how equivalence ratio affects flame temperature. So this plot shows equivalence ratio in the x-axis and y-axis shows adiabatic flame temperature. So what you see is that for roughly about equivalence ratio 1 or 1.1, we are getting the peak temperature, T max. Okay, and then the temperature drops for lean conditions or rich condition. Is this fine? Everyone is, we have, I think we have discussed this, right?
Yes, sir.
So we
Yes,
have
sir.
maximum temperature near the stoichiometric ratio roughly around 1.1. This is the line, and for other conditions we see a drop. So that is what that controls your final temperature, and that will again affect your flame speed also. And this is also this also affects your flame thickness. So this plot is for flame thickness. So you see, this is like the reverse of flame speed. So for equivalence ratio 1, we have the thinnest flame, right? So we have already discussed that this delta, this is delta. Oh, it is not written here. This is delta that is inversely proportional to SL. So SL is maximum here. So this is minimum, right? Now let us go to effect of on flame speed SL. So the same effect what equivalence ratio has on temperature, similar type of effect is also visible on flame speed. So for equivalence ratio 1, we get the maximum flame speed and then it drops. This we have already discussed, right? And this is for uh, alkanes which are very close. Okay. Now we have also some difference. So for propane, ethane and methane, we see that we have a narrow band. Okay, laminar flame speed is following the same trend, but there is some differences. This was like they are almost same speed, but for smaller hydrocarbons, we see a slight difference. So if I look into the adiabatic flame temperature, so as you can see that methane, ethane and propane, they are lying here, very close, while others, they are showing some difference. So that is the difference we see here. So because they show the same temperature, they are showing the same velocity. Similarly, they show slightly different temperature. That's why they show slightly different velocity here. Is this okay?
Sir, I have one
Yes.
doubt here, sir.
Yes.
So, in the sir, methane will take that CH4 plus to give this to that equation, and heptane or hexane will have some other equation. If we
Yeah.
have this, I mean, same mass of fuel that we burn, right,
Yes.
in the same equivalence ratio, will the, I mean, how different will the adiabatic flame temperature reach? Basically, I'm trying to ask is this the graph of the maximum adiabatic flame temperature that methane
Yes.
can reach? I mean, is yes, sir.
Yes. That so this see y-axis shows adiabatic flame temperature. So if you calculate, if you basically you need to look into the bond energies. So what are the bond energy of reactant and product, and using that you can calculate adiabatic flame temperature. That is the idea. So if you look at CH4 bonds and CO2 bonds and water bond, using that methane is calculated. Now here we have CC bonds also. For all other hydrocarbons listed here except for methane, we have CC bond also. So there is like detailed calculation, but this is coming straight away from that. No other complicated thing. This is just based on difference in bond energy. That's all. That is how you define adiabatic flame temperature. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So don't worry about what are the reaction steps. For adiabatic flame temperature, we look into bond energy. That's all. That is the idea. Okay. So moving on. So equivalence ratio also we see that some flames give peak temperature at very high equivalence ratio. For example, hydrogen. And as I mentioned that this laminar flame speed is a characteristics of fuel. If you know fuel, you know what is the laminar flame speed. And this value is given for stoichiometric ratio phi is equal to 1. Okay, so that was the effect of equivalence ratio. Now let us look at temperature. So as we can see here that as you increase the unburnt gas temperature, the flame speed tends to increase. Okay, so these are different lines for different experimental measurements. So this difference just express the experimental error, but the trend is same for all the measurements. They all show that flame speed is almost linearly increasing with respect to temperature. If you increase the unburnt gas temperature, flame speed increases. That is the whole idea. Fine. And similar plot is for hydrogen. So the last slide is for methane air flame. Similarly, we see for hydrogen that flame speed is increasing if I increase temperature, unburnt temperature. Okay, so these are different measurements. There is some error because of different techniques or different setups, but the general trend is that they follow a linear trend. So I can say my burning velocity or SL increases almost linearly with unburnt gas temperature. If you heat the fuel, the burning velocity will increase. Fine. Everyone is clear with this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let us look at effect of pressure. Okay. So effect of pressure on adiabatic flame temperature. So you see that if I increase the pressure, flame temperature is increasing. Almost this is the log scale. Okay. So in log scale we see that it is looks like linear. So it is like exponential increase. So for different fuels, again it will depend on bond energy and all that. But for different fuels, the flame temperature is increasing monotonously with pressure. That is the idea. So now when we see the increase of flame temperature, the flame speed also follow the same trend. The flame speed will follow a reverse trend. So this is one peculiar thing about pressure. So flame speed is decreasing with pressure, but when you look at okay, so this is one measurement, this is another measurement. Everywhere we see that flame speed is decreasing. So can anyone explain this? This we have discussed previously. That temperature is increasing with pressure, but flame speed is dropping. Why is that so?
Flame speed will drop due to reaction rate becoming lesser, right, sir?
No, because of more mass. So
We increase the pressure.
we increase the pressure, the burning rate is increasing. You look at the right plot. Okay, burning flux is increasing. If you look at for methane air flame, if you look at this plot, zero 0.5 atmosphere, 1 atmosphere, 5 atmosphere and 20 atmosphere, you see that as we increase the pressure, the burning flux is increasing. Okay, so what it means is that more mass of fuel is burning, right? But because you have to burn more mass, okay, because once you increase the pressure, density is increasing. That's why the flame speed drops. So this is a very interesting and important observation that flame speed drops with pressure. You see pressure is increasing from 0.5 to 20 here. The flame speed which is shown here is decreasing. Right, flame speed is decreasing here. But burning flux is increasing. Is this clear or you are a bit confused?
Yes, sir.
Others? Any doubt in this? So what I am saying is that if you look at effect of pressure, so pressure contributes by increasing the temperature. Temperature is rising with pressure. Adiabatic flame temperature is rising with pressure. And generally what trend we have seen is that if temperature is rising, then flame speed also rises. This is the general trend in previous discussion. But for pressure, we see that burning flux is increasing while flame speed is decreasing. So burning flux means that more mass is increasing. Okay, more mass of fuel is burning. That is why we are burning. The density increases, more mass burns. That is why flame speed decreases a little bit. Okay, but overall, the mass plus is increasing with pressure. It is a
Sir,
little.
sir, why
Yes,
this only happens with CH4 and why not with other
this
fuels?
this happens with all the fuels. And I had plot of CH4, but this happens with all fuels.
So,
So
Yes,
okay, sir. Okay, sir.
we went we went out the exhaust gases, or we also keep them in a closed volume, sir,
no,
in
you can
this.
assume. Okay, let me tell you. So you can assume that this is a straight tube. So this is the simplest assumption for flame speed. So you see, some your unburned fuel is coming from here, burnt flow fuel is going out. So burnt fuel is going out. Okay, let us say that this is a constant pressure experiment, and this is your flame. Now, what happens when you increase your pressure? The density increases, so it takes more time to burn more fuel in this region. Okay, it takes more time. That's why the flame speed is decreasing. But since it is burning more m dot, the amount of fuel burnt increases with pressure.
So this experiment is basically like a flame torture, not like you have put some gas in a closed container, pressurized it, and then we are like uh, combusting it. So if that happens, this will not be true, right? So I mean,
Sorry,
uh,
please repeat your question.
if we have the fuel mixture in a closed container, pressurized it, and then
Yes.
we combust it, then I mean the what to say, the flame speed will decrease due to that reaction rate, or is the combustion energy so great that no matter the pressure, it just continues? I mean, the reaction rate does
So
not goes down.
okay, so this we are talking about an open flow. Okay, we can maintain this. Sorry, we can maintain this type of. So we can have this type of setup for open flow also. Okay, don't think that this is a closed vessel. We can do it in a closed vessel, but in closed vessel, your pressure will keep on increasing continuously. Remember that we discussed for a spherical bomb, that if you have a closed vessel, the pressure will keep on increasing. So we cannot define it for a constant pressure condition. So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
don't get confused. So let us say that this is we are talking only about this. Let us take this as an ideal configuration. So we have a tube, we have flame coming in. Okay, let us say that the tube is in a room which is at a higher pressure than atmosphere. So we have a tube, we have the tube in some room. That room is at high pressure. Okay, so don't worry about that pressure. You have a tube where you have a constant flow of unburnt gases which is at a higher pressure than ambient. That is the idea.
Yes, sir.
Fine. So if you are getting confused, just you remember these two lines. That if you increase pressure, flame speed decreases and burning flux increases. So that is the bottom line. If you have any confusion, just remember these two. Laminar flame speed decreases with pressure, burning flux increases with pressure. That is the crux of this discussion. This is the summary. If you increase pressure, flame speed decreases, burning flux increases. Is this okay?
Sir, basically you are saying
Yes, sir.
that effect of dominates over temperature factor. No,
Effect of
in
pressure.
case of sir CH4.
Yes, in all the fuels, I am showing plot of CH4, but this is applicable to other fuels also. So what I say is that the effect of density or effect of pressure is more than the effect of temperature. That is what I am saying.
Sir, I am saying in the previous diagram, sir, the CH4 is following some different trend. Yes, sir.
Which diagram? This one.
Sir, no, sir. Sir, just forward it, sir.
This one.
Sir,
This one.
this one, sir. Yes, sir.
See, this is for laminar flame speed. Left side is for flame speed. Right side is for burning flux. See, your SU is decreasing, right? But what is flux? Flux is defined as rho U, rho
Yes, sir.
into SL, or let us say rho SL. So F is, flux is rho into SL.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so SL is decreasing, but rho is also increasing with pressure. So this whole term rho SL increases with pressure. That is the
Ye-
idea.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Fine, everyone is clear with this? Okay, moving on. Let us look at effect of inert gas. So what happens here is, you see, this is N2. N2 is basically, let us say this is air. Okay, so we are talking about inert gas other than fuel and oxygen. So let us say I have fuel plus oxygen plus inert gas. That is the reactant. Okay, that is how we start with. So if I have nitrogen instead of inert gas, then it becomes air, right? Now if in air I replace nitrogen by argon, so the curve will look like this. The flame velocity, burning velocity will increase. And similarly, if I have helium instead of argon, it will increase further, right? So let us have a look. So again, I will say that I am showing plots for CH4. Okay, this is the simplest hydrocarbon, but the discussion is general. Okay, I will not show plot for all other fuel, propane, butane, but the same trend applies to all of them in general. There could be some exceptions that we can discuss, but what generally we observe for CH4, that is also true for other fuels. Don't think that this is only for CH4. Fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let us see what happens. So basically, your final temperature, that as we have discussed, that burning velocity depends on what final temperature we get, right? What is my adiabatic flame temperature? So adiabatic flame temperature will depend on specific heat, right? Now the specific heat of argon is lower than that of N2. Okay, so argon will take less amount of heat. It will not extract more heat, and hence will get more temperature. And because of more temperature, we'll have more SL. Is everyone okay with this?
Yes, sir.
Fine. I will
Yes,
again
sir.
repeat. So basically, the idea is that we have fuel plus oxygen plus one inert gas. If we have air, then we have nitrogen as the inert gas, and this is how the temperature and velocity flame speed varies for equivalence ratio. Okay, so this is shown in percentage, but you can imagine that this is equivalence ratio. This is equivalence ratio of 1. Okay, so if I have normal air, this will look like this. Now what is happening here is that we have large amount of nitrogen which absorbs heat, and we have to heat this also, right? So the temperature goes down. Now if instead of nitrogen in air, if I have argon, then argon has lower specific heat than nitrogen. It will absorb less amount of heat, so the temperature will go up. Temperature goes up means flame speed goes up. So we'll see higher burning velocity for argon as compared to nitrogen. Now what about helium? So argon and helium have same specific speed, specific heat, right? But the final temperature, now the final temperature is also equal. So why do we see a difference here? So thermal diffusivity alpha of helium is much more than that of alpha of argon. Okay, so that also plays a role. So because of this, as you remember, for Le Chatelier we derived the flame equation. You want me to go back, or you remember that? Anyone remembers this equation, or should I go back? Okay, let me go back. You people are listening or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
I will
Yes, sir.
think that I have gone offline. Okay, let me go back to Le Chatelier so that it will be more clear. Okay, so Lee Chatelier we derived some equation for flame, right? What was that? This is the Lee Chatelier. Okay, so we derived that SL is proportional to, sorry, this is the final equation. SL is proportional to alpha, right? Remember this?
So we can't see your screen.
Oh, how that happened? Let me. Now can you see?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is your previous slide what we discussed about Lee Chatelier flame. Now this is the final relation we derived, right? Remember this SL is dependent on alpha, right?
Yes, sir.
So now I am saying that, let me go back to that slide. Okay, we are running out of time. I will take 5-10 minutes more. You have any class after this, or should we stop?
No, sir.
Okay, so let
No,
me.
sir.
We'll take 5-10 minutes more, and we'll finish this premix flame today. Fine. So we have seen that alpha also controls your flame speed, right? So now I can say that although helium and argon they have same flame temperature, so they should have the same curve, but we have different alpha, so we get different curves. Okay, so for inert gas, you can see that this is the trend: nitrogen, then argon, and then helium. Is this clear to everyone? How your burning velocity varies with inert gas?
Yes.
Yes,
Sir,
sir.
yes, sir.
Sir,
Yes,
sir,
yes.
what will be the effect of on pressure if we are adding inert gas? What will
So
be the
pressure
effect
will.
on?
So this all are talking. I am talking about atmospheric cases. The pressure is not increased. So what I am saying is, in air you remove nitrogen, you fill argon. So I understand. So when I supply premix flame, instead of air I have argon.
Uh,
That
okay.
is the idea. Pressure cannot like pressurizing it more with argon. We are replacing nitrogen with argon. That is the idea.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the conclusion is that flame speed depends on both specific heat as well as alpha. Now let us just summarize. So for all these slides, this is the conclusion. So this is a very important table. So what it says is for equivalence ratio, SL is max for stoichiometric. Remember this. This is the type of curve we are drawing, and we say that this is stoichiometric. So SL is maximum for stoichiometric. It decreases both for rich and lean. So this is the lean side. It decreases for lean. It again decreases for rich. This is the general trend what we see for most of the fuels. And flame thickness is following opposite trend. It looks like this. Now temperature, SL increases with temperature. This is a very obvious. Okay. Now pressure. So this is a little bit tricky. So just pay some attention. SL decreases with increase in pressure, but rate of burning flux, rho into SL, this is increasing. Okay, rho SL is increasing, whereas SL is decreasing. SL is decreasing, density is increasing, so the overall term is increasing. Right? This is okay with everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes,
Fine.
sir.
Now let us talk about inert gas. So inert gas effect will depend both on thermal uh, specific heat as well as alpha,
Thermal diffuse. Yes, sir.
thermal diffusivity. So inert gas have lower specific heat, So SL will be higher for, so generally if you look at both argon and what we had, helium, they both have lower specific heat than nitrogen. So in general you can say that if you add any inert gas, if you replace nitrogen by inert gas, temperature and SL will increase. That is the general trend. Okay. Now let us go to turbulent premixed flames. So this is actually a separate topic in itself. Okay, we'll just briefly look at what is this. There are like different books on turbulent flames, so we cannot discuss this for this course. We'll not go into a lot of details, but you should just know what is a turbulent flame and how do we define and how flame speed varies. That is what I will see in like 4-5 slides. So this is what we see for laminar flames, right? Okay, laminar flames, we see a very nice and very steady, smooth flame. This is what we discussed. And let us look at turbulent flame. So this is actually a diffusion flame, but what I am trying to show here is that we have a very irregular or corrugated image, right? You can see here we did some diagnostics. This is what the flame surface we are capturing for laminar, which looks very smooth and very steady. But turbulence is, as you can see, very unsteady, irregular, corrugated. Right? That everyone agrees to?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Fine. Let us look at some more images. So this is a premixed flame. So you see low turbulence. This is irregular, but if you increase the level of turbulence or turbulence intensity, the irregularity increases more. We get very small scales. So what will happen to the flame surface because of that? Any guess? We have a flame surface, right? So this is a flame surface. This bright white light is the flame surface, which is very smooth here. Now if we make it zigzag, let us draw it here. So if I make it corrugated, what will happen to the flame surface? I'm not making a very good drawing, but what will happen to a flame surface? It becomes turbulent. Can you see it? Anyone would like to guess what is the difference between laminar and turbulent? You people are connected or what happened?
Will be
Yes, sir.
irregular in shape.
Regular. So the flame surface, let us talk about the flame surface area. That is what I am concerned with. Flame surface area will increase or decrease?
Increase.
It will increase traffic.
Increase. Very good.
Increase.
So turbulence increases your corrugation, which increases the flame surface area. That is the most important effect of turbulence. There are a lot of other things. Okay, so what will happen because of that? Let us talk about the simplest case that we have discussed all along. So in a tube, if you increase the flame surface area, so this is SL, this is laminar flame speed. Now this is turbulent flame speed. Okay, ST. So will this be more or less? Is this right? Can I say that turbulent flame speed will be more than laminar flame speed?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So basically there are a lot of things. Okay, I cannot go into detail. Turbulent combustion is like a topic for research, but it increases, turbulence increases your flame surface area. Okay, turbulence actually also affects, it alters chemistry to a large extent, but we will not talk about that. But this is what we see. So let me give you a simple analogy. Let me see that I have, let us say that this tube is of diameter d. Okay. So let us say I have another tube of diameter 2d. Fine. Now let us say that this is a laminar flame. Everyone is listening, or you have disconnected?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is, let us talk about a laminar flame. Okay, forget about turbulence. I am just trying to explain how increasing area gives you more flame speed. So let me draw this again. This is actually a very important concept, so I want everyone to be very clear with this. So let us say that we have a tube with diameter d. Now I made another tube with diameter 2d, let us say. Okay, or let us say that height is 2d. Okay, so this is a or let us say that the volume is twice. Whatever, let us say that this is a bigger diameter tube, and again we are having SL, right? So this flame surface controls how much fuel is getting burnt. Okay, flame surface is fixed, so this is fixed. Now let us say that we have the same surface area like this in this tube. Okay, because of this corrugation, we are getting the same surface area what was there for a larger tube, larger diameter tube. So if you take same SL, that can be compressed. So we have the same amount m dot in a smaller tube, diameter d. So will the velocity increase?
Yes, sir.
Velocity will increase.
So this is your ST, turbulent flame velocity, and this will always be higher than laminar flame speed. Okay, that is the crux, that is the bottom line. If you are getting confused using this, just forget about this. Just remember that because flame's surface area is more than laminar case, hence the velocity will increase, and that you can observe experimentally. So if you see the ratio of flame speed, okay, this is turbulent, this is laminar, and this is the turbulent intensity. U prime is the turbulent intensity. So if I increase the level of turbulence, I see that the flame speed is increasing for different pressures and different, I think this is for methane. Fine.
Sir, why the term general is used then?
What is the term?
General. In the first slide, you use general. In general, ST is greater than SL. Then when it is true for every case, yes, sir. Last line.
Okay. So this is the general trend. Okay. It is true for all cases, but in some cases, turbulence could also extinguish the flame. Okay. You have
Yes.
a lot of turbulence, then the flame is gone. So that's why I'm saying that in general, if you have normal conditions, if you have flame, then ST will be more than SL. That is always true. Fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is what we see, that turbulent flame speed increases with the level of intensity of turbulence. That is what this slide is showing. Okay. So there's one last slide I want to discuss. There's one number which is very important for turbulent combustion. This is called Dam-Kohler number. This is basically the ratio of turbulent mixing time scale and chemical reaction, how much time the reaction takes. Okay, so these time scales we define like this. So for turbulent mixing, this is L0. L0 could be the size of an eddy or any characteristic length. Okay, and this is the RMS fluctuation of velocity. So we will not go into a lot of detail, but this is how we define mixing scale or turbulent time scale. And chemical reactions scale is straightforward. So chemical reaction is happening along a flame front. Okay, this is the flame front. We are burning fuel using this. So the thickness of this is delta, and the speed at which the flame fuel comes is SL. Okay, so this is speed and this is length. So we'll get time scale. Here also we are using speed or velocity and this is length scale, so that gives you time scale. So these are the two important time scales that are used for turbulent flames. And then we get the definition of Damkohler number like this, what we have defined. Mixing or turbulent time scale divided by chemical time scale, which can be written like this. We can use this and this, and this is what we get. So this is the Damkohler number definition. Is this okay? This is just a definition, no complex thing here. Everyone is okay with that? What is Damkohler number?
Yes, sir.
Fine.
Yes, sir.
So let us just end it. So basically for Damkohler numbers, we have two regimes. Okay. One is fast chemistry regime. So obviously when this chemical reaction is very fast, then this is very small. Okay. So you see that this is small and this is large. So what will happen to Damkohler number? It will be more than 1 or less than 1? I have already written this.
So more than
More
one.
than one.
More than 1. Okay. Similarly, we have fast mixing regime where mixing is much more faster. So we see that reaction time is more and mixing time is small. So Damkohler number becomes less than 1. So these are the two regimes for turbulent flame, fast chemistry and fast mixing. This is okay. This is basically defined based on Damkohler number. Whether it is more than 1 or less than 1, we define two regimes for turbulent flow. That's all. That is all we are going to discuss about turbulent combustion. Is everyone okay with this or any confusion?
Yes, sir.
Fine. Okay, so let us stop here. So these are some references. I have already uploaded the slides on this Microsoft Teams. So you all have Microsoft accounts. So anyone who has not been able to log in or not attend to class, I will please tell your friends to contact me. Send me a mail and we can look into it. But going forward, we will be using this Microsoft for classes. Fine.
Yes, sir.
So we'll stop here for today, and tomorrow we'll start with the diffusion flames. So let me stop sharing. How do I close? Okay. Okay, thank you everyone.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.